Kitco Mining's special coverage of Fast Markets lithium supply and battery raw materials is brought to you by Lindian Resources.
Energy storage systems are an overlooked bright spot for the critical minerals sector. Wolfgang Bernhart is a senior partner at Roland Berger. Wolfgang, welcome to Kitco.
Hi, thank you.
Tell us about energy storage systems. Why are they growing in importance?
Oh, they are growing in importance simply because of the fact that with the energy transition, we do need much more batteries or energy storage systems to store the energy from the renewable sector. The photovoltaics as well as wind power are going to increase by factor 3 in the next 15, 18 years. So we do need significant amounts of energy storage systems, and battery storage becomes a very good opportunity here.
Now, what I'm hearing about energy storage systems and these backups for what is happening with wind power and photovoltaics is that you hear about sand batteries, you hear about reverse hydro dams within mine wells and things like that. But critical minerals are still going to play an important part of the mix.
Yes, and that's specifically for the short duration storage.
Yeah.
So in the range between 1 hour and 4 hours, you have the ESS systems, battery-based, and they are the best solution here in terms of costs per kilowatt and cost per kilowatt hour, basically.
Now, I really like the research that you've published out of Roland Berger, because you have a real granular look at the growing trends that you see within the industry as well. I first want to talk about lithium-iron phosphate batteries. You point out this is really going to be like a growing percentage of the mix that is going to be going into EVs. Maybe talk firstly what the chemistry is, what are the advantages, disadvantages, why you see it growing.
Yeah, we see it significantly growing. We see the overall sector growing to 5.1 terawatt hours. Of these 5.1 terawatt hours, probably 400 to 500 would be sodium batteries.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Of the rest, so 47 terawatt hours, roughly 42% in total would be lithium-iron phosphate-based batteries, and a significant share of that in the future, so-called LMFP, lithium manganese phosphate-based phosphate batteries. Why do they have an increasing share? Because you have a higher energy density. The energy density of these
Sorry, Roland, the energy density for the LFPs, or for which has a higher energy density?
No, the LMFP has a higher. LMFP increases the energy density compared to LFP by 20%.
Oh, okay.
And that brings you in the range of NCM 622, so the nickel cobalt manganese-based chemistries. Together with new technologies on the vehicle side, mainly doing so-called cell-to-pack or cell-to-chassis without modules in between, you get on the system level an energy density that is as good as NCM batteries. And this is why major automotive companies are going to that. And we do see that also now with premium manufacturers in Europe. We see it with the volume manufacturers in the smaller vehicle segments. So it becomes more important, definitely.
I think you were teasing out, stepping back, but you're teasing out the trends that you see in Roland Berger is that you want to reduce the cost by switching out to kind of cheaper materials, and then you'd see that with the iron chemistries, for example. And the other thing that you point out as being very important is energy density.
Yeah, it's energy density and cost, and that's closely related. Yeah. Let me bring the cost aspect first. A big lever or a big reason why specifically the Chinese industry is now starting with sodium is to put a cap on the lithium prices. So they will switch to sodium-ion batteries if lithium prices are above $20 per kilogram. Then you go to sodium for certain applications, specifically on the ESS side and on the small vehicle side. Now, in general, the cost perspective or increasing energy density is important because that drives down costs as well. So if you look at a cell manufacturing plant, the output is normally the number of cells, with a specific size. If you increase the energy density of that cell, you get more out, even if it's the same number of cells, you get more energy out from a single line. Within the cell, you have less material per kilowatt hour. So, and that drives down costs. That's the big lever that drove down costs from $1,000 per kilowatt hour 14 years ago to $120, $130 per kilowatt hour for an NCM cell today. And that's high. It was already 70, 80, 2.5, 3 years ago when raw material costs were important.
I'm also here, if I understand correctly, that there's some automobiles that are mixing both chemistries, so you'll have both the lithium-ion as well as the sodium-ion, like within the same vehicle.
I would say this is the proposal of CATL in China to have those mixed chemistries with sodium and LFP, which gives you the advantage of having certain having a certain range, but at the same time reducing costs. You have this type of this idea of mixed chemistry also in the US, by the way, with our Next Energy as an example. They do a similar stuff, but with LFP and potentially a solid state battery as a kind of range extender. So that it's more. There are higher requests for higher demands for the battery management system, but it can be a good opportunity. But that approach is probably being seen for the next 4 or 5 years only in China and not in the Western world, I would say.
Generally, Wolfgang, so like all of the critical minerals, so we'll go like nickel, rare earth, cobalt, lithium. You're talking about, we talked about LFP, we're talking about sodium ion and stuff like that. Generally, though, all of these minerals are considered to be safe. There is going to be continued growing demand for them.
Yeah, definitely. Strong. Definitely. There's no doubt about it.
Explain, please.
Yeah, sure. No, maybe we start with lithium. And in the morning, the colleagues from Fast Market have shown their projections, and that is also we work together. It's also based on our understanding on cell chemistry demand. So even with let's say 8% or whatever on the vehicle side, 8-9% sodium batteries, you still have a significant increase in the overall demand. And that will means for lithium an increase from roughly 700 kilotons lithium carbonate equivalent in 2022 to 3.6 megatons LCE equivalent. So more than factor 5 in the next couple of years. And then on the nickel side, it's a similar situation. Yeah? While a significant part is defined through the demand for steel, batteries get an increasing share. And even with an increasing share of LFP and an increasing share of other low nickel chemistries, we do see an increase from 2.9 megaton metal equivalent to 4.9 in 2030. So a lot of additional demand that needs to be supplied.
I think one of the big stories of 2023 within the critical mineral space was really the growth or the coming forward of the Chinese automakers. You're based in Germany. You're based in Stuttgart, but I was wondering if you could. It would really seem that there's a lot of wind in the sails of the Chinese automakers, and I'm just wondering kind of what that's actually going to mean for the critical mineral sector. So I look, for instance, at BYD. BYD sold more automotives by a long shot than Tesla. You also look at the share that's really collapsed for some of the big 5 automakers that are out of North America. Are we kind of really at a turning point for the Chinese automotive sector right now? What could that mean for critical minerals?
I would say it's obviously the biggest driver, and China will account for 50% of the demand in lithium-ion batteries in general, and therefore also for the critical minerals.
Yeah.
We will see a much bigger push for export, specifically to Europe. Obviously not so much to the US. There's more protection, I would say, and there's a bigger opportunity for the Chinese manufacturers of cars, but also for batteries, etc. in Europe than there's in the US, and they will push for that. And you have obviously also the local demand in China, and we will see demand even in countries where there was no demand for EVs, like Southeast Asia or India. That's also to some extent fulfilled by the Chinese. So it means continuous growth.
Are we going to still be stuck on the supply side right now in terms of being able to supply lithium and being able to these markets? These are just projects that take a very long time to come online. They take about a decade, is that correct? So
yeah, it depends on the type of project. So project expansions on the lithium sector is 2 to 3 years. New projects is more in the range of 7, 8 years. Refining 4 or 5 years, but for new technologies it can be 6 years. So there is enough. There's a good chance, that we put it that way, that we will see. That we will have a more or less balanced supply of lithium, maybe even an oversupply in a certain period of time, and then after 2030 it has to be seen, because there's also the big gradient after that. When Europe going to go for 100% EVs in 2035, that means again a significant increase of battery demand.
Wolfgang, lastly, is there any large trends or is there any large events that you're looking forward to in the critical mineral space over the next 12 months?
I would say the interesting part is what's happening with, let's say, low nickel content technologies like manganese-rich, that's being promoted by 2 major Western cathode material manufacturers that could be in a similar cost range like LFP.
Explain what that is again.
So that is a technology where you have only 30% nickel, no cobalt, and 70% manganese, which gives you again a slightly higher energy density like LMFP, which we have discussed before, and the same at a little bit lower costs. Yeah, but the easier part, the supply to build the supply chain is easier probably in, for example, the US than to build the LFP supply chain in the US. So that might have a certain share as well. That's an important topic, and then obviously the increase of silicon-based anode materials that can play a major role in actually increasing again the energy density of the cells, and therefore decreasing the demand. So we might see with a significant higher share of silicon than what we are assuming today, we might see a slightly lower demand figure for the critical minerals, but lower costs as well, which might then in turn increase the sales of vehicles. So it's a complex story anyway.
Roland, if people are into your research, where can they find it?
Sorry?
If people are interested in your research, where can they find it?
Oh, they find a lot in our webpage, so they can go to our webpage, and we also have another one which is called automotivedisruptionradar.com, where you can find our research and research from other partner companies, or our research in our website, or contact me directly.
Wolfgang, thanks for speaking with Kitco.
Thank you.
My name is Michael McRae here at the Fast Markets 15th Lithium Supply and Battery and Metals 2023 show for Kitco Mining.
Kitco Mining's special coverage of Fast Markets Lithium Supply and Battery Raw Materials is brought to you by Lindian Resources.